Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into one of the absolute most gripping stories in all of human history. This is a tale passed down from ancient Egyptian priests to the wise Solon and eventually to Plato. We're talking about the end of Atlantis, a cautionary tale of power and pride. And look, this isn't just some fairy tale about a cool, shiny city. It's a genuinely chilling account of a massive empire, greater than Libya and Asia combined, that vanished completely into the ocean in a single, dreadful day and night. So how and why did this actually happen? Let's unpack it. Okay, let's dive into this. As Plato himself pointed out, to really wrap our heads around the weight of this story, we have to put on a very specific philosophical hat. True wisdom lies in knowing that you know nothing. If we just look at this as a literal myth, we completely miss the point. We need to open our minds to the idea that this story is essentially a giant mirror. It's reflecting human nature right back at us and asking us to really question our own certainty and, honestly, our own arrogance. To understand how they fell so hard, we first have to understand how they rose. We're traveling way back, a staggering 9,000 years back, to an era the Egyptians actually called the first time. Back then, out beyond the Pillars of Heracles, this incredibly powerful, fertile island started to flourish. And it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was born from the wisdom of a woman named Plato, who managed to keep the peace among different tribes, and the leadership of her son, Atlas, who first united everyone. From those really humble, unified beginnings, total greatness bloomed. Now, their early society was basically a masterpiece of concentric geometry. It perfectly mirrored their social harmony. Picture walking for it. Out on the outer ring, you've got humble workers and these lush, gorgeous agricultural fields fed by mountain springs. You move a bit further in and boom, you hit the second ring, lively merchant marketplaces just buzzing with prosperous trade. Finally, right in the center, locked behind impenetrable walls, was the sacred inner ring. This was the beating heart of their power, holding the royal palace and Poseidon's absolute gleaming temple. It was just a flawless balance of nature, craft, and government. And right at the core of all their spiritual wealth was this completely unique, radiant, reddish metal called orichalcum. In those golden early days, this wasn't just some shiny bling they used for decoration, it was literally a cosmic conduit. Meditating priests would sit in front of these towering orichalcum statues to find deep spiritual balance, and they'd receive visions they believed came straight from the gods. But definitely keep this metal in the back of your mind, because what started as this beautiful tool for harmony is eventually going to be corrupted by pure greed. To keep all of this harmony running smoothly, Atlantis leaned on three specific groups of guardians working out of the Great Library. First up, you had the Kyrios, who preserved ancestral knowledge and answered questions from the past. Then, the Noisites, these philosophers endlessly debating ethics and destiny. And finally, the Thera, revered priest-scientists who actually used the energy of orichalcum for healing. These guardians held everything together, and they were constantly warning their apprentices about one fundamental truth. Knowledge is essentially fire. If you handle it with courage and humility, it lights the way. But if you let it run unchecked, it will absolutely burn your world to ashes. Which brings us to the tragic turning point. See, the original seafaring kings were these daring explorers. They sailed into the unknown not to conquer people, but to respectfully trade and share their agricultural and medical breakthroughs. But fast forward a few generations, and things change. That drive for knowledge totally decayed into a hunger for possession. The later kings became completely corrupted. They hoarded their wealth, they became obsessed with domination, and they cowardly waged wars from the safety of their glittering thrones. They stopped seeing power as a responsibility and started treating it like a divine right. Before the whole thing collapsed, just imagine what everyday life was actually like and what they stood to lose. Every single dusk, families and sages would activate these glowing orichalcum spheres to quiet their minds and just be in the present, basically an ancient mindfulness retreat. Once a year, they had the ritual voyage of Poseidon's golden boat to bless the canals. And my favorite part? During the festival of luminous tides, they would release thousands of delicate bioluminescent creatures, turning the ocean into these radiant glowing paths. It was a deeply, deeply spiritual culture. But sadly, none of that beauty could save them from the rot at the very top. So what went so wrong? The root of it was actually carved right there in the hidden chambers of the Great Temple. When the gods fall silent, men begin to believe themselves eternal. The elder kings got so drunk on their own splendor that they held onto power with an absolute iron grip. They hoarded all the treasure and completely shut out the younger generation, who were just desperate to bring some fresh purpose to their decaying society. The elders stubbornly thought they were invincible. They completely ignored the fact that when power gets so blind it thinks it's eternal, collapse is usually right around the corner. And then, the universe basically gave them one last terrifying warning. Way out at the edge of the inner ring, there was this forgotten dark temple called the House of Silence. When the Guardians of Knowledge went down into its cracking crypt, they found this chilling prophecy carved into a stone slab. The secret was this: if you forget the hand that gave you the ocean, that same ocean will come to claim its due. The younger wise men were terrified. They wanted to shout this from the rooftops. But the older sages, they knew the horrible truth. This wasn't a warning anymore. It was a final sentence. Nature literally started screaming at them. Over a wild 48-hour window, the first tremors hit. One morning, the water in those perfect canals just started flowing backward. Bizarre, right? By that afternoon, birds are taking off in panicked flocks, and the dolphins totally vanish from the harbors. By evening, the sacred orichalcum just flakes away in silence. And the next day, this gentle, incredibly eerie tidal wave pulls all the way back, exposing the ocean floor, and then returns with serious resolve. And the absolute ultimate tragedy here? The arrogant leaders completely ignored every single one of these massive red flags. They just threw parties for new treaties and went right back to counting their gold. Well, you can only hit snooze on nature for so long. Survivors would later call this the day the sky wept fire. Out of nowhere, Mount Omphalos, their sacred mountain, the literal navel of their world, let out a deafening roar. A massive river of molten rock and fire shot into the sky like a spear, just covering the heavens in ash. In an instant, daylight turned into pitch-black night, and a burning storm rained fire directly onto the great palace, right on top of those oblivious elder kings who were probably still sitting around debating their alliances. Judgment was officially here. The final destruction was just breathtaking in its absolute scale. While the elders were burning, the rebellious, forward-thinking younger generation ran for the docks and escaped on ships with linen sails. And as they looked back, they saw the sea rise up. But this wasn't just a wave. It was a colossal wall of liquid, like a faceless beast raging with centuries of contained fury. It pulverized those majestic outer walls in a matter of seconds. The ancient jeweled statues of Poseidon were violently ripped up and completely swallowed by the abyss. In mere moments, this perfect, magnificent civilization was just voraciously devoured by the ocean. Just like that, the island was gone, sinking into the dark, alongside all its hoarded jewels and fading orichalcum. But those escaping youths, weeping for their lost home, realized they'd actually saved something infinitely more valuable than gold. They saved their memory, their skills, and their profound knowledge. They figured out that when one world dies, the next one begins to grow in the hearts of the people who just refuse to give up. They weren't royalty anymore. They were the seeds of a brand new beginning. So these seeds of rebirth scattered all across the ancient world. But here's the best part. Instead of trying to conquer everyone they met, they integrated. Up on rocky plateaus, they built these incredible stone cosmic clocks. Not as fortresses, but to remember the stars and teach the locals. Over in Melita, they gently shared their farming wisdom and helped build new temples. And in Egypt, an Atlantean princess named Nailia brought her knowledge of the stars and hardy seeds, trading wisdom for protection. They took the legacy of Atlantis and literally wove it into the foundations of these new cultures. They traded their arrogant pride for a legacy that actually lasted. Atlantis didn't fall because of some random string of bad luck or a freak earthquake. It was destroyed by blinding pride, ruthless ambition, and a ruling class that completely ignored the limits of nature. When a society actually believes it's untouchable and throws away balance just to chase endless wealth, the storm is already on its way. So as we look around at our own modern world today, we kind of have to ask ourselves, are we treading the exact same path? Are we listening to the warnings? Or are we just admiring our own reflection while the water starts to recede? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next one.